Pop is me kind of stepping forward into into doing the things that I always felt like I that were corny to do, or like I couldn't let myself feel or like try, because I felt like I always had to be on like the edge of the radar, and I always had to be in like the unexplored territory. But once I realized that like music is literally just freedom and do whatever I want, I was like, oh well, let's just start where I never let myself go.
1 heart, 2 sides, vacant queen size.
Okay, Wayfie, I want to officially welcome you to Pop-Up Conversations. We're here in Toronto. We talk to artists across the country about their musical journeys, projects they have in the moment, and everything that's just going on that's good, that's creative, and we couldn't be more excited and pleased to have you here. So welcome on the show, sir.
Thank you very much. I am very excited to be here. It's always a pleasure to be able to share more about myself and kind of get into the behind the scenes stuff.
Absolutely. And just from the bit I have read about you, it's so, in such a short period of time, I wouldn't necessarily call it a short period of time, because you have been at this for a very long time. But in that space of time, you have accomplished so much in your life. Seems so interesting, and I want to get to the root of all of it. Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. So I know we're here to talk about your single, "Call Your Mind," but I want us to back up a little bit, if you don't mind. I want you to take me back to when you were 5. I read that you were put. I read that you were put in a piano lessons that didn't quite go on for much longer, but interestingly enough, it sparked something in you from, I think it opened the door of possibilities and what music could bring. But if you could take me back there and just your initial encounter with music and how that started to flourish, I just want to get a sense of that.
Wow. So the initial encounter with music, it's always beautiful looking back on it, because for me, it was a matter of like, you enter the world and you don't really have a choice to be in relationship to everything else around you. So when I entered the world, I happened to be in a home. Both my parents are church ministers, and
Okay.
yeah, so music and the church go back very, very long. However, there was always an upright piano in my home. And, you can only keep the young child away from leaning up and pressing on the keys for so long. And yeah, I just remember being really, really young, and there always kind of being some sort of instrument lying around. And I just felt like drawn to it. And both my parents always were very open and encouraging for me to just like interact. And I don't think there was much like hopes that they had tried to project onto me, other than putting me in piano lessons is kind of like the extent to which they projected their hopes and dreams on me. But yeah, anyway, so just really young, interacting with the instrument itself, and just like that innate sense of wonder and curiosity that I think essentially drives me to this day to continue creating and to continue diving deeper and exploring my relationship with music, was essentially the thing that started it all and still keeps me going. So yeah, I think just being really young and having like that home environment that was encouraging and supportive and open, and just like gave me the freedom to be able to just like press on the keys.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a remarkable story. So I think there's also a difference between, being in an enabling environment and finding that curiosity, which I think a lot of kids might have. But when you take it that step further, I understand that you also, around 12, 13, thereabouts, you started to learn how to play the guitar from YouTube videos, and you learned how to play the bass, and you're self-taught. What would you say, beyond curiosity and beyond all of the other things, what would you say, pushed you even farther to say, I want to pick up an instrument. I want to learn more about the stuff. I want to keep exploring. What was that driving force?
So I think early on, there was always just like this deep satisfaction I got from being able to take what I had absorbed and what was then further living inside my head and being able to like continue that feedback loop of like it going in and it coming out and it going in and it coming out. So growing up, being around music, I listened to so many different things, having like my parents' influence, having my older siblings' influence, having people around me, being like in unique communities that influenced me. So at the end of the day, it was just like this desire I had within myself to take what I was hearing in my head and just simply put it out in front of me. And in many ways, it was like a self-pleasing kind of thing because I just felt like pleasure and I felt this satisfaction from being able to just hear something. Like I was really fascinated with melody and I was really fascinated with like one of the first things that my older brother told me, like looking back, was I learned how to play the recorder, something a lot of people experience in like elementary school.
Okay.
But I learned how to play the recorder, and when I just had the freedom to like play with these like 8 notes or like 12 notes in a scale, and it just I was starting to realize that I could just play any melody I wanted. Like I didn't need to go farther than these 12 notes. And just being able to sit around and go between different instruments, I was just fascinated to find out how I could kind of connect to these sounds that I had heard, and whether it was hearing the guitar melodies or hearing harmony. And the musical journey just unfolded as I just kept nurturing this fascination I had.
Awesome, and I think that's interesting because being able to, so just like you said, you eventually turn out to be a producer, and you're self-produced. Most of your, if not all of your work, are self-produced. One can circle back and say, much early on, you were hearing all of this stuff and you were listening to all of this stuff that has now come to fruition, right? You were hearing all of these melodies, which you're now translating. So if we, we're gonna move on from there, but I know that you were part of a band, and you guys did some covers, Green Day and Blink 182, which is so different from what you're doing right now. But I think the point here is that your journey, regardless of how short it might be, has packed a lot of stuff in it. And so I want you to give me a sense to the point where I know it may not be a particular moment for you, but at what point did it become a start to get feasible that you could actually make a career out of this stuff? At what point did music become that serious for you that you say, okay, I'm going to give this a shot, I'm going to start producing, I'm going to start working with upcoming artists, just like I've read that you do, and start working with all of this creative people around you? At what point did that happen for you?
The point at which I think that my fascination with music started, like I started considering how that fascination could evolve into a career, was when I just began to realize that there was really no going back in terms of dedicating so much time to this. And I think there was a point in high school where maybe my parents, and I think especially my mom, she always had this hope that I think I would pursue some sort of academic career post-secondary school and get a degree and just kind of succeed at some sort of academic level, because her whole life always wanted to write books and be an author. So she definitely put that in my mind, like the importance of words and storytelling and how there's this like deep connection between all those things. So in high school, I knew that there was these expectations, and I knew that it wasn't like sort of if you don't do this, we're going to be so disappointed in you. But
Okay.
I just knew that there was this, like, they really believed in my potential, and they asked me, like, what do you want to do? And I just knew that music was what truly was in my heart, and I had to be honest with them because, and so I said music, and they were like, okay, well, you seem pretty dead set, and you're not the type of kid that we can really change your mind once you've made it up. So it was a matter of kind of negotiating and working together to figure out how I can apply myself. And earlier on, before I was really towards the end of high school, it was like maybe I would be interested in like composition, like because I think traditionally that's something that really encompasses a broader um, a broader sort of involvement in different types of music, which is something I
Okay.
always wanted access to.
Okay.
However, there was signs and there was people who just got placed in my life at the right moments, and um, in many ways, it was just kind of presented to me the idea of music production, and at that point, I'd already become known amongst the people in my life as a multi instrumentalist.
Hmm.
And once I discovered that there's like a whole like team behind songs, and like that music is such a collaborative art form, I
Hmm.
realized that it's like I didn't have to necessarily be someone just playing the instruments. Like I could actually be involved in creating that. And I think once I realized that the possibility was there, like my fascination just again unfolded to a even larger landscape. And I started doing my research and discovering that there's production schools in my own city that have like a really good reputation, and and then the teachers like were people I knew, and it was just too uncanny. And it was like, anyways, I just followed the signs and ended up, I couldn't turn back. So
Yeah, yeah. But isn't it fascinating though that, once we set our minds on a path and we start walking that path, that, for some reason, people, the people who are gonna help us arrive at a destination starts to show up. I find that very fascinating.
yeah, yeah, me too.
Okay.
So I read also that Nimbus School of Recording and Media, you go there, and there's something interesting here that I read from your bio. I'm going to see if I can pull it up, but at some point you were able to figure out the connection between poetry and songwriting. I know that you've brought that up initially about poetry, but I was fascinated just reading about it, that you are interested in lyrical abilities and how that intersects with music. What does that mean for you to be able to deploy poetry in such a way that you can make it work with music?
Um, for me, it was just like I realized that there had been people throughout my life creatively, like artists who I'd been listening to in music that had just constantly influenced me and constantly inspired me to fall in love with music, that there's a lot of depth to what they were doing, and it didn't just involve the things that initially stuck out to me. So for me, I mentioned earlier that I was just fascinated with melody,
Yeah.
and so I really got involved in the instrumental aspect of music, which naturally led me into production, which is very responsible for the sonic landscape of a song.
Hmm.
However, my mom presented to me like at a very early age like this love for storytelling and this love for words, and she made it very clear to me that I always have words and I always have the ability to feel and express and gain validation through words and through stories. And when I discovered poetry, and when I just like, I mean, I grew up reading like Dr. Seuss, like Cat in the Hat. So at a very early age, it was apparent that there were words that we used to communicate in a very simple way, and there were words that we used to just kind of splatter on the page for the hell of it, you know? So when I got old enough, I realized, and it was just kind of those, when you have these two realizations just happening, just growing over time, at some point they just connect. And I got to this place where I realized that poetry and the expression of words is like a higher form of expressing emotions, and then doing so in an intricately musical way and combining the two is essentially what people who had been inspiring me as artists throughout my whole life had been doing. And it was just like that aha moment, and it was like, it's all about the song. It's all about the
Yeah.
song.
I hear you. I'm so excited to listen to you talk about the lyrical aspect of the music production process, because it's so important. You know, I don't think people quite understand how important it is to the whole process, but it is really important. And I'll tell you why I asked the question, because we're going to get to your first single from the year, which is Fairy Tale. And I started to listen to that, and you could tell that this is a storyteller at heart, and this is some deep level writing. And I was just drawn to it beyond your vocals and beyond the great video that you put out, but it was just so powerful, the story that was being told in that song. So again, I know that we're here to talk about Call You Mine, but I want us to walk through the other two singles that you've put out this year, Fairy Tale and I Just Want to See My Friends. I'll be, yeah, if you wanna, just take me through the process of creating that, how long ago the songs were written, and what was the process of producing them. I know there's actually a burden. I wouldn't call it a burden, but a producer who writes and makes music as well. At what point do you give in to say, okay, I'm done with this project. This project is EP ready or is radio ready. I need to send it off, because you're controlling so many aspects of it, right?
Yeah, well, I guess maybe I'll just touch on the process of those two songs a little bit. So
Yeah, for sure.
those two songs, and I think it's pretty clear if like one were to look at the overall catalog of songs that I've put out to date, because there are older songs. However, there's a clear kind of definition, and it does start at Fairy Tale. And I mentioned before that there's this kind of like connective moment where I realized that the song is so important, and the writing and the melodic and like everything like at a writing level is so foundational to a great song. And from that understanding and from that realization, it dictated this new kind of focus when approaching a song, whereas prior it was a lot more of like a blind process. I don't know if that makes sense, but it felt like a lot of dancing in the dark. And which is not horrible, which is beautiful. There's a lot of beauty in that. And someone saying the lyrics, that's funny. But yeah, so the process with Fairy Tale and I Just Want to See My Friends was this kind of new evolution of my songwriting, because it was the first time that I actually put a lot of effort into making sure that the song stood for its could speak for itself.
Okay.
The song could speak for itself, and that was a matter of me being able to just sit with chords, really simple chords, just nothing fancy, and being able to give like appropriate accompaniment to what it was I was like, the story I was telling, making sure that the chords matched the emotion and that the emotion was well articulated in a way that was easily understandable, but like there was still like a nuance to that like flavor you were kind of receiving, if that makes sense, So yeah, I guess in more simple terms, the process for me at the beginning of the year, starting with Fairy Tale, was a matter of how can I communicate how I'm feeling to people? Because before it was just a means of how can I express how I'm feeling? And a lot of the times we miss that communication aspect, and communication requires understanding. And it's really easy to isolate people and to alienate people from what it is you're trying to express when you remove the whole aspect of communication. And so when I reminded myself of that, I brought myself to this kind of new style of writing that involves being able to share how I feel in a way that's able to get from me to someone else.
Awesome. So when I started listening to Fairy Tale, I'm just going to tell you a few of the words I just started writing down on my pad here. Of course, it's I don't think you often see or rather hear on the radio about a pop ballad from a male. I get the sense that it's a pop ballad. It's the song, like you were saying, is kind of empty, but your vocals shine through there. I don't know if that was intentional, but the instrumentals themselves is almost empty, but your vocals are so heavy on it that it's beautiful. So I wrote haunting on here. I wrote great writing. I wrote intense, and I think all of this just captures what you were able to do with Fairy Tale, which instantly made me a fan of yours. I'm like, this guy knows what he is doing. I'm gonna listen to this, right? I'm gonna listen to stuff he puts out. So I thought to tell you that when I spoke to you, and your passion for poetry and storytelling and great writing just shone really brightly on that one song. That's why I wanted to reach back and talk to you about that.
I fell in love at 17, found the girl of my dreams, and honestly I couldn't breathe. And what a mark on your cheek, all the reasons to believe in a real life kind of fairy tale. Nobody ever told me how it hurts to let it go. And when you lose control, how you gonna trust your soul? So exhausted from the crying, and for the life of me I can't catch a breath, and it feels like I'm dying, but at least I'm trying. I can never seem to figure out, scared of all my friends, I'm full of doubt. In the worst ways, I'm typically staying home, watching my favorite shows again and again and again, getting lost in a fairy tale in my mind, getting lost in a tale this all this time. And I know I said I'd call, it was a lie, and hiding all the reasons why.
I know that you were involved in a project that was Juno-nominated this year, and the reason I bring that up is, how does that make you feel, that, you know, a project that you're involved in gets the highest recognition that Canada has to offer? What does that do for your career at this point?
It's interesting because I think as artists and as people who, as artists and as creatives and as people who thrive on purely expressing themselves in an unapologetic, in an unabashed sort of way, you know, everything, wow. I wrote earlier, I was doing like a word exercise in a doodle, and I wrote, all else is external. And I think that to create in a pure, honest sense is to really hone in on what it is that you feel. And I think that at a simple level, yeah, it makes me feel awesome because I grew up, you know, wanting approval. I think everyone wants approval. I think everyone wants to be accepted. It's a natural human instinct. And creatives have no exception to that rule. However, there are those who bring themselves to a place that is very separated from the rest, which is solely inside themselves. And I don't know if my destiny is to be in that place. However, I exist in a place that does relate to, you know, other people's thoughts. And so being on a project that got nominated for Juno felt awesome, because the part of me that wants to be accepted, and the part of me that wants that validation just was like, oh, this is nice, you know? But at a creative level, it's something I've had to really reckon with. It's a dangerously pleasureful feeling, and I think pleasure has a way of like wanting to just like really stick around. And I've had to learn the lesson of reminding myself that like I can't necessarily rely on this feeling to bring me forward in my evolution as a creative, because I think the best things I've ever created have been things that I feel like I locked myself in a room to create, that was like by myself, that was like me feeling what I wanted to feel. So yeah, Juno's made me feel awesome. However, it taught me a lesson to look inward and to rely on my own self-approval a lot more.
Wow. So those are very deep and insightful thoughts you just delivered. Yeah, very, 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 very good. Okay, so for the people who have no idea what I'm talking about, it was for the track is "Fill Up My Heart" by Sosa's the artist name is Sosa's, and the EP is Voices, and it was nominated for the Best Dance Album for Juno 2021. So congratulations on that project. And I do hear you. You used a term just now, dangerously pleasureful or something like that. But those are just contrasting words, like an oxymoron of some sort that, you know, I think, you know, for creatives they should be mindful of. So thank you for saying that. Let's talk about "Call You Mine" now, which is a great pop song. It would appear that you have honed in on the ability to really write these pop songs. I think I heard on another interview where you were talking about, you know, just starting to write pop songs and all of that. Why pop songs? at this point in your career? You know, especially we'll get into Call You Mine, and I have a few lines I want to read here from the song about how it was written. But you're loving pop songs, and is it how upbeat they are? Is it the instrumentation? Is it like what is it about pop songs?
So normally my mind goes to talking a little bit more about my dad.
Okay.
However, I have to give an honorable mention to my older sisters. I have two older sisters. They're twins, and they're 15 years older than me, I think. And
Okay.
when I was really young, they put Backstreet Boys on, and you know, like when you're that young, it's like
One of my favorite groups of all time, by the way. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, so Backstreet Boys and like La Rouge. Anyways, I don't necessarily know how much that played in, but I think my dad is the perfect example. So my dad was a DJ back in the 70s.
Oh,
My mom partied and my dad was a DJ, and that's how they met.
okay.
And then they became pastors. But yeah, my dad was a DJ. So growing up with a DJ as a father, and he kind of got control of the car radio whenever we were driving places, I always noticed this theme of what he would play. He'd play such an eclectic mix. He would play everything from Michael Jackson to John Denver to Earth, Wind and Fire to The Temptations. So there's all this like really wide range of music.
Yeah.
And like a lot of 80s stuff, because he DJ'd from the late 70s to the early 80s.
Okay.
But one thing I noticed was that they were all like the hits, you know? It was always like off the wall, and it was always Thriller, and it was never really like the deep cuts necessarily. And so being raised at such an early age on these hits, I think that there's just this natural instinct that was ingrained in me that's like, you know, like I just always really enjoyed things that like I could just sing along to, you know, and I never
And bop to, yeah.
and bop to, you know. So it's like I want being able to feel that and being able to like be really young and drive with the windows down and just like sing my heart out, like that really impacted me in a positive way. And I think pop music has always been about that. It's been like, how can we just like let people let go and just like put the car window down and just feel that sense of like, I'm allowed to feel this right now, and I don't have to be so apologetic about it. I can just sing this 2 or 3 notes with this very simple, I love you, I love you, I love you, na, 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 you know, like I love people being able to feel that and not have to apologize for it. And that's what pop music lets people do.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna pick up on a word you said there about being eclectic, because I have gone back to listen to the song that you and Jessia won on a competition for, and a bunch of other things, and it just shows your range. I think it shows. I think it shows your range as a songwriter, as a producer, that you're able to weave in and out of all of these genres, you know, seamlessly, I might add. And it's great, you know, your ability to do that. So you know, you said that word about being eclectic, and probably haven't gotten that from all the things you listened to when you were young. And I think, you know, it shows up in the work that you do. And I think it's a very important trait to have, even as you work with other artists and as you produce music as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so Call You Mine was written over 3 years ago, and it's essentially about a song about a second chance and stuff like that. I understand it's not a real experience, it's kind of fiction, but you have been able to somehow, it has been able to fit squarely into what we're going through in the world right now. Could you just want to tell us a little bit more about the process of writing and actually creating that song? I take it in a pandemic year.
Yeah. So yeah, the writing started a while ago, but the production followed maybe more like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And yeah, so it was always like a desire for me to explore the different like human emotions and like the different feelings. And like I think there's the expression, there's nothing new under the sun. And I'll use that to kind of tie into the idea that, you know, we're in a very, very unique situation right now in terms of there being a global pandemic happening. However, I think all it's really done is just amplified aspects of human feelings that perhaps were there all along, you know? And I think now more than ever, every relationships have really suffered due to social isolation and due to lack of communication. And I think one thing that the pandemic has showed me is that, like, we are not as good at communicating as we should be to really maintain the relationships that we cherish, you know? Being frequent people in each other's lives is something we often take for granted. And when the world forces us to go to our own corners, it's like, do we really have what it takes to maintain all of those relationships? And like, how are we going to treat each other when we realize that? Are we going to give each other grace? Are we going to give each other understanding? Or are we too bogged down by what we're going through on our own? And are we able to understand that there's people who are going to be too bogged down with what they're dealing with, you know? And so Call You Mine was a song that was simply like, hey, you know, like, I'm gone, but I want you back. Like, you know, I want you back. And I don't think that's a new sentiment. Like, I think that's a sentiment that's been there for a long time. Like, that I want you back, like, give me another chance, like, second chance. And so yeah, this was a fun opportunity for me to really, like, dive into, I use the term popisms because I love how pop is, like, you know, it's like a couple people have pointed it out more recently, like, it's like, you know, the color of your eyes. It's like, you know, they try and really, like, generalize things that feel specific. Yeah. So I wanted to just play with that a little bit, you know, because it's something that like I mentioned, pop is me kind of stepping forward into into doing the things that I always felt like that were corny to do, or like I couldn't let myself feel or like try, you know, because I felt like I always had to be on, like, the edge of the radar, and I always had to be in, like, the unexplored territory. But once I realized that, like, music is literally just freedom and do whatever I want, I was like, oh, well, let's just start where I never let myself go, which was the predictable, but in some way, like, coming from that place, it wasn't even that predictable, you know, like, it does sound poppy, it does sound something maybe you've heard on the radio, but there's like a unique twist to it, and I like that because that's me coming through in the song, you know, so.
One heart, two sides, vacant queen size. Your face feels like heaven to these eyes. I'm gone, meanwhile you'll be just fine. Would you wait for me if I tried? Would you let me into your life? Let me back on into your life? Would you let me make it right? Or let me change your mind? I can make up for the last time, take you out onto a long drive. I just need to know if I could maybe call you mine. Things feel dreamlike being in your life.
Awesome. And regardless of whatever it is that you do decide to put out, since it's coming from your unique point of view and your creative, uniqueness, is always going to be you, regardless, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I do love the song. I've listened to it like all day coming into this stuff, and like I said, I've also gone back to listen to your back catalog and all the stuff that you've done. It's crazy. I read all the stuff that you've done and all the people you've worked with, and time doesn't doesn't allow us here to dive as deep as we would like for all of this stuff. So we probably would look for a better and much long format platform to have that conversation. But I want to say congratulations on this single that was put out on August 27th, Call You Mine. We're going to point people to it, and I'm going to put it on our page, of course. It's definitely worth the listen. And also I just like, we have so much talent, man, in this. I have so much talent. And I appreciate yours. I think it's remarkable, all the stuff that you're doing, and we couldn't wish for you much success. We couldn't wish more success for you.
Thank you. That means so much to me. It's I use this term giving myself permission quite often, and I've gone my whole life, it feels like, not giving myself permission to kind of be in the spotlight or feel that like sense of satisfaction that comes from people like glorifying you, but also like just celebrating you. And I think now that I've kind of turned it from glorification to celebration, it switches the narrative, and it feels more comfortable to be able to sit here and dive deeper and talk about these things and not feel like I'm some sort of like narcissist, because that's a little bit of a, I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily healthy. I think everyone deserves to celebrate the things that they spend a lot of time doing. So I appreciate you giving me this platform to be able to come celebrate myself and dive deeper into the details of my creation.
No, absolutely. I'm not. So the things I say on the show to the people I get to talk to are I don't say them lightly, right? Especially for the creative arts, I think people put in blood, sweat, and tears to have an idea and be able to articulate it in art form and have the courage to share it with the world. So it is, I say the things I say. I know the way to which I say them, and I strongly believe in your abilities, and that's why, I'm celebrating you, and that's why we're having this conversation today. So big ups, man. Big ups and big ups and big ups and big ups.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so 3 singles out this year. Are you working towards an EP? So you've got, I think you're on a lot of people's radar right now, from the Juno stuff and all of the great music that you're writing. Where are we headed now? What's next?
Well, me and my manager, we are working together to hopefully in the next year or so launch our own independent record label. And
Okay.
it's going to be a way for me as a producer and me as a songwriter to showcase a lot of the artists who I've had the pleasure of building relationships with, and to showcase their work and to just shine a light on their amazing songs that they've let me into and to help execute their visions. So in the next year or two, we're going to be rolling out some music from friends and artists of mine that I've had the pleasure of working with, not mine. But they maybe they call me mine, or I don't know. I tried to play that and it didn't really work as smoothly. And then, so this fall, I also have a collab coming up. I don't want to necessarily give away too much. However, I'm really excited about it, and it's a friend who I've worked with before. And I'm looking forward for them to kind of be the one to share more details about that. And then, in terms of multi-song projects, I am definitely setting my eyes on doing that, because that's another thing that over the years I've had a deep appreciation and fascination with, is multi-song storytelling. And I'm not sure exactly when. However, it's sooner than maybe I thought it was going to be. So
Okay. That's a lot that you've got going, and we're excited. I'm really excited to hear more music from you. So it's an open invitation whenever you need to come back on this show, whenever you have stuff that you want to, share with our audience, or, whatever it is that we can do. We're really, really excited to listen to Canadian music and listen to Canadian artists. We're just really passionate about that stuff, and you fit squarely in the box of people who are taking their talent and just using it for good stuff, and we're really, really excited for that. So thank you so much for doing that, Wayfie. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I also did a little bit of my own research, and I saw that you also have a podcast. It is that you host as well.
Yes, yes, I do. I
So
do.
that's awesome. That's awesome, and yeah, I'm always open to, my DMs are always open, so
Oh, for sure, for
I'd love
sure,
to
for
have more
sure.
conversation with you. I've really enjoyed this, and I was warned that you ask really good questions, but I didn't expect it would be this enjoyable. So thank you for entertaining my overly philosophical narrative and diving in with me and just keeping me super engaged. This was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm going to tell you, I also thoroughly enjoyed myself because the conversations that are deep and insightful, I find very fascinating because I think all of that, intersects with philosophy and music and how you see the world and how that bears itself on your work. I think they're all intertwined and you cannot abandon one and so I think that all intertwines. Before I let you go, just let us know where we can find your music and website and all of that stuff.
You can find my music on all streaming platforms under Wayfie. My artist name is Wayfie. My real name is Nathan. But my artist name is Wayfie on all streaming platforms. Here on Instagram, it's Wayfie. I believe it's the same on Facebook and Twitter. But yeah, Call You Mine. It's on all streaming platforms now, and yeah.
Awesome, awesome. All right. I want to thank everybody who has joined in today. We've been talking to Vancouver-based Juno-Nominated artist Wayfie. He's so much more than that tag or that title as we have found out today. He is very deep and insightful, and I think that shows up in his writing ability for people who are actually listening to the music and to the lyric of what he's putting out. And it's been an honor to talk to you today, Wayfie. We do know there's so much more bright things ahead of you, and we're going to be watching your career, man. Pull a front seat. We're watching your career, and we're rooting for you, hopefully we see you play someday in person, but until then, we want to say have a great rest of your day, but we'll keep talking for sure, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
No problem, bro. Take care, man. And thanks everybody who came on. Bye bye.
Yes, thank you to everyone for coming through and supporting.
Awesome. Awesome. Bye bye.